I am a member of the Milledgeville community, community organizer, and just a long-time friend of Ray here, who has been always very kind to open up his barbershop for us to have community events and community conversations. And so today I wanted to, well, first of all, did everybody get a chance to get a copy of the program?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, no problem. Good. Sure. And so with the program, there's also another document, which is sort of just a key takeaway from the full document. So we won't be going through the whole. This is about 30 pages. So what I really want is, for everyone who gets a program, take time to read it when you're home, go through it, kind of understand what it is that we're trying to present the community with. But we'll sort of go through the key points of this program today. And so the first part of it, I'll kind of do a presentation on the program. And then after that, we'll engage in some conversation, get some thoughts, feedback, and, really just engage in a community building sort of moment. So with this program and what the purpose of it is, and I'm sure all of us, in here are aware of our current political situation with the new administration that we have in office, and understanding that, with that being said, a lot of there's certain communities that are more vulnerable than other communities, and so there is a lot of sort of a panic and people wanting to figure out what do we do, how do we move forward, what changes is it that we need to make to be able to make it through these next 4 years and beyond. And so this program that we put together is sort of, for us, a starting point to that, right? Because one of the things that was on my mind when, during the last election cycle and even now is, this administration came in with their Project 2025. They had very clearly outlined goals and things that they wanted to accomplish once they took office. But what do the people who are on the receiving end of that, what do we have? Where are our plans? What is it that we're going to be doing over these next 4 years to protect our communities and to build our communities to the point where we are not vulnerable, no matter what administration is in office. So that's sort of the purpose of this program that I've handed out today, is to be able to start to present something to the community and to say that there are people in the community that are thinking about this and that are working towards doing something that is going to help our community be able to build. So one of the, and just to kind of introduce the collective that is behind this program, it's a collective. We call ourselves the New Vanguard, and we're sort of a think tank that is dedicated to doing community building, working in the community and trying to, especially amongst younger folks, but also working with older generations, trying to build intergenerational relationships, trying to build community relationships, and trying to create community-led solutions to the issues that we're facing. All right. And so this document is kind of a framework that is based on a lot of those ideas, based around community-led solutions, based around grassroots organizing and those sorts of things as well. And so we kind of started talking about what our current political landscape is, right? What the situation that we're in now. And one of the things that I think is important to get across to people is that although we do understand the crisis and the urgency that comes with the current administration we have in office, I try to help people not be so narrow-minded in terms of thinking of a solution, right? Because if all we focus on is trying to create solutions around just this particular administration, this one administration, then it doesn't really get to the root of the problems that exist in our communities. It really doesn't get to the root of the conditions that existed to allow an administration like the current one to be able to, win the presidency, not just once, but twice, right? And so really trying to get people to take a more long-term and sort of a wider lens to our approach to building solutions, to really understand that, while we do, we are not, this administration does not create favorable conditions for our community. The problems are bigger than just this one administration itself, right? So we really want to focus on what are the root and systemic causes of the problems that we are worried about. Right. For example, recently I was sitting with Miss Cindy Edwards. If y'all are familiar with her, she does a lot of great work in the community, and she was talking about how they're not sure if they'll be able to get funding to feed the kids over the summer, for example, right? And that's something that is a consequence of the current administration. But hungry kids in our community did not start with this administration, right? So we're really looking at how do we get to the base causes of these issues, so that one way or the other, we're not worrying about kids going hungry during the summer. Because the fact of the matter is, a lot of kids, the only time they get a meal is when they're at school, right? So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to think about with this. So along that, we're really trying to identify these things, right? Talking about things like systemic racism, talking about things like economic disparities that exist in our communities. I mean, even if you look just within Milledgeville itself, Milledgeville is a very clearly segregated city, both physically, both by wealth, both by race, any kind of standard of living that you want to think about. Milledgeville is segregated along those lines, right? And so these things are very deeply entrenched within our local communities, but also just within our national sort of community as well, right? The United States, these are issues that have been pervasive through all administrations in the United States. And also thinking about what has been the role of the U.S. government in these problems as well, right? And not just the federal government, but our state governments and our local governments, right? Because going back to the Heritage Foundation, who wrote Project 2025, this is an organization that's been around since 1973, since the Reagan administration. And they've been very instrumental in shaping a lot of the policies that federal, state, and local governments have put into place over the years, right? So they've been working on this game plan for about 50 years now, since they were created during the Reagan administration. So we're not just dealing with something that, came on the scene, just last year or 4 years ago, whenever it is that they put out Project 2025. But we're dealing with, this is like a game of chess. They've been putting the pieces in place for a very long time. When we look at some of our state government elected officials, and we look at some of our local elected officials, and some of the policies that they've put in place over time, we start to understand that this is something that really we have to start fighting locally and be able to build from there, right? So that is sort of an introduction to the conversation that we will be having today and the ways in which we want to look at these issues. So one of the things that in putting together this program, I wanted to be able to identify some very specific things that could kind of serve as an umbrella, for all the other sort of more specific things that we'll be talking about. And so understanding that what we really need to be focused on is understanding that there's a need for political, economic, and social transformation within our communities and within the nation, right? And so, like Dr. King said in 1967, there needs to be a revolution of our morals and our standards in the United States. So there are three key aspects of this program when you get a chance to really dig down and read through it, and as you're following along on the takeaway document that are kind of highlighted in what we are going to be addressing. So the first thing, those three things to begin with are politicizing, organizing, and mobilizing, right? And so that sort of is, if you want to say, like a three-step process in what we are trying to establish with this program. Because what we're trying to create with this program is not just something we can sit and talk about, but things that we can put into action in our community and start working towards real solutions, right? Mm-hmm. So with politicizing, we're thinking about political education. We're thinking about educational reform, because a lot of what we see now, especially locally, I remember, sitting here with Ray, who was telling me about just some of the conversations he had with people in the barbershop, understanding that there's a real lack of political understanding in our community. People really are not educated when it comes to politics, when it comes to history, when it comes to certain things, certain social dynamics that exist, right? There's just certain things that they just don't know about, and so what they go off of is whatever they hear on the news. And we know that what's said on the news is not always the most accurate information, right? We even know what's being taught in the schools is not always the most accurate information, right? So if people are being raised, being miseducated, then the decisions they're going to make are misguided. So for us, we understand that one of the first things we have to do is really begin to build campaigns and efforts around political education and education reform, generally speaking, right? And so even with this program, it was very important that we established a political ideology around the program, right? Meaning, what is it that is going to give us our direction in terms of building solutions coming out of this program? And so some of the key things, our politics for this program is, one, understanding that the conditions that we are experiencing now, the problems that we're experiencing in our communities, are really conditions that are created through abuses of human rights, right? A lot of times, I think our issues and our problems are framed as civil rights issues, right? And while there are a lot of them that are civil rights issues, I think people really need to be able to distinguish civil rights and human rights and understand what those two things mean, right? When we're dealing with issues that have to do with housing, that have to do with health, that have to do with your education, right? That have to do with your access to healthy food. Those are human rights issues, right? These are things that are guaranteed to you by human rights law, right? When we're dealing with civil rights issues, you're talking about things that have to do with voting, taxes, citizenship, those kind of more so government-related things. Those are civil rights issues. But a lot of us are suffering from things that have to do with our human rights. If we look here just in Milledgeville alone, look at how inaccessible healthcare is, right? You look at how expensive food is. You look at how the South Side, for example, doesn't have as many grocery stores as the North Side. The North Side has almost all the grocery stores in Milledgeville, right? You look at the housing conditions in Milledgeville. These are all human rights issues, and I think it's important for people to understand that, because I think it sort of reframes the way you look at the issues in your community if you understand these things as human rights problems rather than civil rights problems, right? And so the second thing that kind of leads into is understanding that we are global citizens. To be able to understand, your human rights is to understand that there can be no law, whether a national law, a state law, or a local law, that can go against what your human rights are, right? So to be able to understand that, you have to understand that you are a citizen of the world, not just a citizen of the United States, right? So your human rights are applicable no matter where you are in the world, right? And so that's important for people to understand, because that gives people, again, a different kind of framework to work around when they're thinking about the issues that they're dealing with. And then the third thing is understanding that organizing, the things that we're going to have to change, we're going to have to organize not just behind our moral and ethical principles, but we're going to have to organize to be able to shift power dynamics, right? So one of the things, there's a quote from Stokely Carmichael. He said, if a white man wants to lynch me, that's his problem. But if he has the power to lynch me, then it becomes my problem, right? And power is the ability to be able to execute, the ability to be able to do a lot of times, right? So we understand that we are victims of certain conditions, because whether it's a government or whether it's a particular group of people have the power to be able to execute harmful policies, harmful things onto our communities. And a lot of times we don't have the same power in being able to protect ourselves. So, and the second aspect of this program, when we talk about organizing, for us, organizing is really understanding that organizing is a capacity building process, right? Building the capacity to be able to have the power to do the things that our community needs for us to do, right? And so organizing is us coming together and figuring out the ways in which we're going to be able to change the power dynamics in our community, but also nationally or statewide. However we need to change the power dynamics to be able to solve our issues. Organizing is really the sort of method in which we're going to be able to figure that out, right? But we have to bring everybody in the community to the table to have those conversations. People have to understand that this is something that is on us to fix. Nobody is coming to save anybody, right? If the community has an issue, the community has to fix the issue, even if we didn't create the issue, unfortunately, right? Because we know the people that create the problems don't want to fix them. So if the community wants these issues to be solved, then the community has to be the one to take the initiative and create the framework to be able to solve these issues. And then the third aspect is mobilizing. So mobilizing is, once we've created these organized bodies, we've created, we've established our politics, and the community understands what it is that needs to be fixed, and we've kind of brainstormed on what these solutions are going to look like. Then we have to take action and start implementing these solutions, right? So again, it's not enough for us to just sit around and talk about what the problem is, but we got to start doing something about it, right? And so, one thing I found is that a lot of people are really good at complaining and talking about what the problem is. Not everybody wants to take action and actually solve the problem, right? So, once you tell people, well, I got a plan, let's go do something. Oh, well, man, I got this going on and that going on. But, you talk to them, it sounds like this is a really big problem in their life. But then when it's time to implement the actual solution, not a lot of people are willing to do that, right? So to me, I think this is one of the most important sort of points in this program is the point of actually taking action. Because a lot of people do understand what the problem is, but it's not always that you'll find people willing to take the initiative to actually solving it, all right? And so another thing that I covered in this program is the question of our youth, our young people. And the reason why I wrote this into the program is because over the last year or so, I've had the opportunity to do a lot of good work in the community, and being able to sit at a lot of tables at community meetings with the Harrisburg Community Collaborative and the Oconee Heights Community Collaboratives and just other organizations. And one thing I always notice is when I'm at these meetings, it's always a lot of older folks, right? And so a lot of the times I'm the only young person at the table, and I'm wondering where all of the other young people are at, right? But also alongside with that is, I hear a lot from the elders that say, well, we're looking for the young people to pass this on to. We're looking for somebody to take these things and carry them forward. And that's a very important sentiment, because we do understand that the longevity and the sustainability of our solutions is going to depend on us being able to have intergenerational framework, intergenerational relationships, right? So I talked a little bit about, young people and I think there has to be some accountability taken on both ends of things. Because I've also run into a lot of stubborn old folks who don't want to let go of their older ways or the older ways of thinking. You come to the table and they tell you, well, you don't know nothing, you young, you ain't been through this, you haven't been through that. And so a lot of times they exclude your voice and your perspective from the table, right? And I'll give you an example. A lot of times when I come here and I talk to Raymond and I'm complaining about rent or things like that, and Raymond will tell me, man, I haven't been in the rent or the housing market in a long time. So he doesn't even begin to understand what it is that a young person like myself who's trying to build a life right now is going through, because he's been out of the housing market, right? But at least he can understand that, and he can sit there and listen to me and understand what it is that we're going through. Whereas you may have a lot of older folks that would not have that same sort of understanding. So I think it's important that, with older folks as well, is that you give young people a chance to, voice the things that they're thinking, bring their perspective to the table. And not saying that we're always going to be right, but then that's when we come to you all for guidance. But the guidance has to be, you got to be able to guide us and not just, turn us away completely. So, I talk about it in the document as well, and just kind of go into that, because I think that it is going to be important for us to figure out how to bring our young people to the table, because it really is going to depend on them in the long term, right? Oh, let me get your program. No problem. All right. So with all that understood, one of the important things is also to understand where we start, right? Because a lot of times these problems can seem very big, it can seem very complicated, and people want to understand, well, where do we start to really organize or attack or understand these problems? And so one thing I did is to outline just some of the things that are happening in our own local situation. And I think that that's the best way to start, because when we can change people's lives locally, they then can understand what it is that we're fighting for on a national or international level, right? Sometimes when you talk about certain things, people aren't seeing any changes in their material condition. They really can't grasp, these ideas that you're trying to push forward to them. So we look at things like, for example, poverty in Milledgeville and Baldwin County. According to the last census that I was able to find, Milledgeville has a poverty rate of about 40%. Right, so we're talking about almost half of Milledgeville that is living under the poverty line, right? That's a very, very big number compared to the state and national averages, which are around somewhere between 10 to 20%, right? And poverty in Baldwin County, in the county, is about 23%. So it's a little less, but still over the state and national average. So understanding that, and understanding that poverty is really the root cause of a lot of the issues that we're dealing with in terms of quality of life, we can sort of now go down the list and understand and look at certain things and understand why certain things happen or understand why certain problems exist. So one of the other things I noted here is lack of diverse career options, right? And so when I look at Milledgeville, for example, for me, when I graduated college, I went to Georgia College here. I went to Oak Hill, Baldwin, graduated from Georgia College. I had to leave Milledgeville for a couple of years because there were just no career options here for me with, having the college degree that I had. And I found that to be true with a lot of other young people. When I was in middle school and high school, most young people, most of my friends that I knew, the only thing they were dreaming about was, I just got to get out of Milledgeville. I got to get out of Milledgeville. I got to leave, go find something better. There's nothing for me here, right? And so I think that in a way, I would love for a study to be done on this, and I'm sure it's been done elsewhere, but I think that the lack of career options in Milledgeville is a lot of what either drives young people away and also contributes to the high poverty rate that we have, right? We also look at limited access to health care. So there's a community health needs assessment that is published, I believe, every 2 to 3 years. If you go on Navison Health, their website, they have a community reports section under there. You can find the Baldwin County Community Health Needs Assessment. And some of the things that they talk about in there is the high prevalence of things like diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease in the Milledgeville community, the Baldwin County community as well. And what a lot of that is related to is our limited access to healthy food options, right? So as we mentioned, you have half of the city of Milledgeville on the south side that only has one grocery store, and that's Piggly Wiggly, right? And a lot of people, you talk to them, they say the prices in there are just too high. You know what I'm saying? But you have maybe 30 fast food restaurants for around that one grocery store, and people, it's a cheaper option, but it's not great for the long term, right? And so we have to understand that these are things, when people talk about things like structural racism, the ways in which our communities are designed, they're designed in ways that black communities and other communities of color are generally designed to lead to limited access to healthy foods, and we have worse health outcomes in our communities. Right, and so another thing is lack of mental health resources in Milledgeville and Baldwin County. And so this is something that I wasn't really aware of until I read this report. And they talk about how we have increased rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide in Baldwin County because we don't have as many mental health resources, right? And you think about also how that relates to poverty. Poverty really creates situations that lead people into very desperate sort of moods, right? Poverty is not a situation that creates happy people, right? So when you have a lot of poverty and you also don't have a lot of resources for mental health and things like that, you get increased rates of poor mental health, and you also get increased rates of crime as well, right? Poverty is one of the, if not the biggest contributor to crime in any community, and you can always kind of gauge how much poverty is in the community by how much crime is in that community as well. Substance abuse is also on the rise in Baldwin County as well. They talk particularly about rising opioid and alcohol abuse, and just the fact that we have a lack of rehabilitation centers as well in the county. They also cover maternal and child health issues, so talking about limited prenatal care and also high rates of infant mortality in the county. Some other things they talk about is housing, and housing is a really big one, particularly lately as we notice sort of an increase in our homeless population as well. And they talk about how there's high eviction rates in the county, lack of affordable housing, increasing homelessness, and lack of safe housing as well. And so this is something that for me became very noticeable when I moved back to Milledgeville last year and I was trying to find somewhere to stay. And I just could not believe the rent that they were trying to charge people out, because I already know that people don't make that much money in Milledgeville, right? I think the average income is somewhere around $38,000 or something like that. And you're charging people $1,200 for rent. Where do you think people are going to get that money from? And we can get into the conversation as to why that's happening as well. But another thing is the poor water infrastructure. Now, this is something that I have been aware of since I was in middle school, because I remember how many times they had to close school because we had a boil water advisory. and the water was just not safe to drink for 2 to 3 days, for some people a week, right? I read a couple of news articles about some of the elders in our community who, their water was not good to drink for weeks on end. They didn't have any access to clean water. And so thinking about these things, when I think about where do we start, we have a laundry list of issues that we could begin to organize around, right? And so I think that instead of people trying to think again about, this big problem, we have Trump in office and this, that, and the third, again, if you focus too much on that, you're ignoring all the other things that you could be working on that would actually improve people's quality of life in our community, right? So these are things that I think are very great, tangible starting points in terms of what do we do, how do we organize, and the kinds of solutions that we begin to create in our community. All right, so with that understanding those issues, then the next thing is like, where do we go from here? What do we do next? And so, again, as we talked about earlier, it's important that we organize, right? And there are many organizations in Milledgeville that are doing good work in the community, many organizations involved that are doing good work in the community. And I think it's important that, first and foremost, people join an organization or join some type of organized group of people that are doing something. So whether it's the community collaboratives like Harrisburg Community Collaborative, your Coney Heights Community Collaborative, whether you join your local NAACP, whether you join one of the health organizations, just find something that speaks to an issue that you're passionate about or something that you want to solve in your community, and get with them, join them, and be part of a group of people that are working together to solve an issue, right? And ultimately, what the goal is that, one, we want to build people power, right? So bringing people together at the table to start to think about their problems and eventually transform people power into economic and political power as well. Because we understand that the two things that change anything in this country is money and politics, right? And so if people don't control the money in their community and don't control the politics in their community, then ultimately you're left powerless to be able to solve the issues that you are worried about, right? And so the end goal with building people power, with building economic power, with building political power is community control and self-determination for this community, right? For this community to be able to say that we can decide the fate of our community, we can decide the health outcomes or the housing outcomes in our community, and people are able to have a decent quality of life in Milledgeville and Baldwin County, right? And so with that, kind of what a baseline of that would be for me in understanding that is for us to be able to build towards, first of all, being able to provide our own basic necessities, at least at a subsistence level, right? Meaning that, we may not be creating a whole lot, but at least everybody has what they need. Everybody can have 3 healthy meals a day. Everybody has a roof over their head. Everybody has clean water to drink. Everybody has clothes on their back, so forth and so on. If we can at least do that, I think that would be an achievement that could really make a great impact on our community, right? And so being able to do that takes a couple of things. For me, when I think about those, I think about 2 things: having clearly defined goals and clearly defined demands, right? And I think that a lot of times when people come together to want to solve an issue, a lot of times they're missing having some very clearly defined objectives. What is it that you're looking to do? Or if you're organizing people to go to your city council or to go to your county commissioners, what are you going to ask for, right? I think sometimes people just go and they kind of have a shouting match and then they leave and then nothing gets done because nobody came with a demand. So based on some of the issues that I read upon and I identified, thinking about some clear defined goals, thinking about things like eradicating food poverty and food insecurity, right? So not just helping poor people and helping to feed the hungry, but actually getting rid of poverty and getting rid of food insecurity, right? Because if we just say we want to help the poor and feed the hungry, then we're accepting the fact that there's always going to be poor people and there's always going to be hungry people, and that is just not the case, right? In 1967, Dr. King, wrote a speech called The 3 Evils of Society, and he talked about the fact that America has enough resources to end poverty, to end hunger, to end homelessness, but they continue to choose not to do so, right? So there doesn't have to be poor people in this country. There doesn't have to be hungry people in this country. It doesn't have to be homeless people in this country. We got enough homes, enough food, enough resources that everybody can be taken care of, And so thinking about the ways in which we can begin to do those things, or what would be some of the objectives that we would be aiming towards. So one of those things I talk about here in the program is the practice of group economics, right? The practice of the community understanding that, again, the community has to control its local economy, right? So when we think about, for example, the local economy of Milledgeville, it's dependent upon a few very big institutions and corporations. You have your Walmarts, you have the state prison, you have the universities. Now what happens when these things shut down, like we saw with Central State, right? Or what happens when these industries decide to leave, like what happened, around 2010 when a bunch of these industries decided to leave Baldwin County. People are left very vulnerable, right, to poverty. People, because these jobs are not jobs that are created in the community, right? They come here, they use the community for as long as they can use us, and then they leave, right? And then people are left to figure out what to do from there. So group economics is really about establishing community infrastructure, community institutions that don't leave the community no matter what, right? Because they're created by the community, they're controlled by the community, and the community has an vested interest in seeing that these things stay and succeed, right? So when you have things like community stores, community farms, community gardens, those kinds of things that are created in the community, nobody can come and take them out of the community. They don't have any incentive to leave because they were created here in the first place. The second, what I put next to that is demanding a redistribution of wealth and resources. Again, there's a lot of money in Baldwin County. There's a lot of resources in Baldwin County, but they are controlled by a very few people and very few select businesses and institutions and things like that. And what people have to understand is that this is a lot of what contributes to poverty is when people come here and they take up resources from the community and then hold them in their businesses or in their institutions, and the community doesn't get to benefit from that, right? And so one of the things that I talked about in the program is when we think about things like DEI, for example, and this is something that I talk a lot about, especially having graduated from a university like Georgia College. Georgia College has had a DEI program for as long as I had been there, and as long as I know. But the university is still 90+% white, and most of the students are not from here, right? But that university has a lot of resources and a lot of wealth, and takes up a lot of land in the community. But not a lot of people from the community get to go to Georgia College. Right? So what we have to understand is happening in situations like that is they may have a DEI program, that's fine, but does that actually translate to benefits for people in the community, for people who look like me, right? Because what is really happening is they're taking up wealth from the community, but that wealth is being invested in people that are not from here. And then those people get to go back to their communities and become successful and thrive and make their communities continue to thrive, right? So looking at those kinds of situations, we have to demand that these businesses or these institutions or these state entities that are going to be in Milledgeville and Baldwin County need to redistribute their resources into Milledgeville and Baldwin County in a way that is substantial, right? You don't just create a little program over here and every now and then you send your students to volunteer 1 day a year and then act like you're doing something. That's not going to work, right? It's never worked. So there has to be a serious demand for things like that. Another thing I talk about is land reclamation and reparations. So reparations is a conversation that has been going on for a very long time on a national level, right? And one of the things that I've discovered as I've talked to more and more people in the community is there are a lot of older folks in the community who have stories about their family land being taken away right here in Milledgeville and Baldwin County. Right, and not just a little piece of land, but acres and acres of land that's been taken away from their community. And when we look at it on a national scale, I believe the number is about $360 billion worth of wealth has been taken out of the black community through land theft since 1910. So think about how much generational and community wealth has been taken out of communities like Milledgeville and Baldwin County, right? Taken out of black communities over time. And this is what reparations is really about. It's about repairing that damage that has been done, right? Because when they come around and tell, well, you just got to work harder, you just got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Right now, there's a community down in Hancock County that is fighting a railroad company that is trying to come to their properties, right? This is how they steal land and transfer wealth out of our communities. Because once they build that railroad on those people's land, that railroad is there forever, right? And then he's gonna own that piece of land that he's built the railroad on. You understand? And so these are the things that I think we also need to be thinking about is how do we begin to have a conversation around land reclamation and reparations on a local level? Because these things do happen on a local level and people do talk about them. And these are things that have impacted how our communities have been able to develop, right? And so how do we begin to have those conversations and what demands can the community make around these issues? Another thing I wrote down here is, talking about quality education and increased career opportunities, right? So thinking about certain things like building community schools, right? Because we know now, when I came back, I had a lot of people, asking me about going to teaching and teaching in the school system and things like that. And I would love to work in education, but I also understand the limitations that would be put on me as, I wouldn't go in there and want to teach whatever this new, curriculum where they're taking Black history out of the curriculum and you can't talk about certain things. That does a disservice to our children, right? That does a disservice to their self-esteem, to their understanding of history. They already weren't teaching a whole lot of Black history anyway. So a little bit that y'all do teach us in that 1 week in February, you're gonna take that away, and now tell us we can't talk about these things. So one of the things that I always, talk about, for example, during the Civil Rights era, they had freedom schools in the community, schools that were built by the community, teachers who came from the community, who were able to teach the truth and able to teach the children what they needed to understand about their history, along with all the other important subjects like science, math, and things like that, right? So thinking about those things, we have, I think we have a lot of opportunity here to really start looking into how do we educate our own children, right? To be able to build them up, to also see value in their community. Because a lot of times when you're going to, the public schools and things like that, they don't really teach you to see value in your community. They don't really teach you to want to, invest your time and your efforts into your community. A lot of times when I came back, people say, man, why the hell you come back to Milledgeville? Milledgeville raised me, and I have true concern and I'm really invested in wanting to see this community do well, right? And so when I had the first chance I had to come back to Milledgeville, I took that chance and came back to Milledgeville because I wanted to do something, give back to the community that invested in me as well, right? And so I think that, thinking about things like community schools, thinking about things like just even, learning centers that we could, create for our community would be really important. Another thing, trade apprenticeships. So, there's a lot of skills nowadays that I would say, people in my generation and younger don't really have a whole lot of, right? Woodworking, right? People that know how to build, people that, things that you can do with your hands, trades that are very essential to the functioning of our everyday life. And that really bring in a good income as well, right? But a lot of young people, we're not taught to think about trades. We're taught to want to serve in a more service economy, want to sit behind a computer or a desk or whatever else, right? But there are a lot of people in our community who still have those skills, right? People who are masons, people who do woodworking, steelworking, whatever it is. And if we started to really, value those skills and really push the importance of those things, and start to build, like I said, learning centers or community schools where kids can learn those skills and be able to make a living for themselves, right? Make a living in their community. I think that would really do a lot of great, have a great impact in terms of building a strong local economy. And then another thing is just having increased community involvement in our schools, in the first place. And I know that's something that is a multifaceted issue because, now even with a lot of parents, they're working 60 to 80 hours a week just trying to, take care of basic needs, whether it's rent, food, or whatever, right? And that kind of ties back into, our conversation on poverty and those kinds of things like that. But having increased involvement in schools, I think would also help for people to kind of see firsthand what is going on in these schools. In the first place, there are a lot of folks that don't know what's happening in the schools. They drop their kids off, they go to work, pick them up, and that's it. So as long as they're at school, that's all they're worried about. Another thing, thinking about healthcare and housing, for example. So we talked about the lack of healthcare access in our community, and I was talking I was talking the other day about just the fact that we have one of the top nursing programs in the state, in the South, really, right here in Milledgeville. Right? But again, how many people from our community get to be able to go and get into those nursing programs, right? I graduated from the early college program here, and I volunteered with the program a lot, and I've seen how many young men and women in our community want to go into healthcare, want to go into nursing, want to become, doctors or have these different, healthcare specialties. But for whatever reason, we know the reasons, Georgia College really does not provide them the opportunities to be able to come to this school and build on those skills and have all of the different access to resources that the students who are there have, right? So again, how is it that if we can't even keep our kids here because the schools here don't want to admit them, how can we create an interest in them to want to invest in the community, right? So that's something, to think about. But, also thinking about, if that's something that we can start to make a demand of, thinking about things like building community clinics, right? Thinking about things like when it comes to housing, tenant unions, for example, right? There are a lot of folks in Milledgeville who are renting and living in very, very terrible conditions, but they really can't do anything. They go to the landlord doesn't want to fix anything, or they just, the landlord will try to raise the rent if you, bring a problem to them. So creating tenant unions, and this is something that, we'll talk a little about later. There's some work kind of being done around that. But having tenant unions for renters in Milledgeville, so that they don't have to keep dealing with high rent and unsafe housing conditions because they have landlords that are trying to exploit them and, take their money. But another thing I wrote here is ending real estate greed. Now, I don't know if y'all know, but the real estate situation in Milledgeville is very, very bad. There are a handful, maybe 2 or 3 companies that own a large portion of the real estate market in Milledgeville. Certain companies and certain people that own most of it. And from what I understand, a lot of real estate folks are on our city council and our county commissioners. And so, their interest is in making money, not in making sure that people have safe housing or affordable housing, right? And I think that that's something that we also need to have a conversation about and try to start to figure out how do we address that, because greed is one of the things that contributes to a lot of suffering that we have in our community and in our society. And then the last thing I put on here is forcing policy changes, right? And so that gets more into the thinking about political power, thinking about things like forming voting blocks, right, in our community. So when we have issues that we're really concerned about, the community needs to be able to sit down and figure out how we are going to vote, who we're going to vote for, what policies do we all put our energy behind, because if everybody's voting here and there, you don't really have a unified voice in the political space, right? And so if we can sit down and begin to form voting blocks around these issues, not only that, but really start creating a new generation of politicians in our community, right? Because some of the politicians that we have in our communities have been politicians for as long as, some of us in here have been alive, and they've been sitting on those positions, not doing anything, and people feel like, for some reason, that they owe a certain loyalty to these politicians. People have to remember that politicians are civil servants. They work for you, not the other way around, right? So people feeling like you have to have loyalty to a certain politician does not do you any good. They need to have loyalty to you, and you need to make them understand that if you don't get something done, we will vote you out. You won't be sitting in that seat, 40, 50 years, and just getting paid for not doing anything, right? And so I think that that kind of goes with the political education aspect. Things like building community councils, for political oversight when it comes to these elected officials as well. Right, so those are some kind of ideas that I wrote into this program that people could start thinking about in terms of what are the things that we could do to start solving some of these issues. And so, with that, one of the things that I did is put together this roadmap. And so, what this roadmap does, it kind of condenses a lot of what we talked about today into sort of 3 simple phases for creating systemic change in our communities, right? And so in the program, you also see this roadmap is outlined a little bit in more detail. But as we talked about, phase one is, education and raising the consciousness of people in our communities, right? So things like community study groups, political education, literacy programs. Because we know the literacy rate in this country is falling and continues to fall every year. And so if people can't read, they can understand what's going on in the first place, right? And so we want people to have, literacy and comprehension to be able to understand what's going on in their communities, first of all. The second part, as we talked about, is capacity building, right? So once people are informed, we need to build a capacity for our communities to have the power to do the things that we need to do and implement the solutions that we need to implement for change, right? So building community-controlled infrastructure, building coalitions in our community, right? So, organization is individuals working with individuals. Coalitions is organizations working with organizations, or communities working with other communities, right? So we need to be communicating, we need to be doing things with other organizations and other communities, because a lot of times you might want to, you or your organization might want to do something, and another organization is already doing it. And we understand that we're working with a very limited pool of resources already. So you don't want two organizations doing the same thing, fighting over the same resources, when we could just be working together, right, and have a bigger impact and make the best use of our resources in the first place, right? So you do things, again, like we talked about, like developing cooperatives, building tenant unions, community-controlled businesses. And even with community-controlled businesses, I want to make the point that a lot of times you'll have folks in the community that start a business, and they'll, well, you got to support me. I'm a community business, but then they don't invest anything back into the community, right? That's not something we can continue to have happen. You can't just come take money out of the community and not invest back into the community when you know that there's issues happening, right? People got to understand that we're not here to make anybody, the next Milledgeville millionaire or whatever. You have to invest back into the community so that the community can take care of its needs, right? So we're building community-controlled businesses for the sake of taking care of the community, not making, one or two people in the community wealthy and, putting money in their pockets. And so phase 3 then of the systemic roadmap is direct action and policy changes. So once we've built up this capacity and we have this organizational power, with what we've done in phase 1 and phase 2, now we really have the strength to go out and carry out some of these actions, right? So now we know that if Walmart is having some bad business practices, or they're discriminating or doing something we don't like, we can boycott them without jeopardizing our access to certain needs, right? Because for a lot of people, stores like Walmart or Kroger or whatever is where they get, their basic needs. So you can't ask somebody to boycott Walmart, but then not tell them where else they can go shop, especially if we don't have an alternative option in the community, right? So we want to build this capacity by having community options that people can shop in the community, they can get their basic needs. We have a lot of elders that need, they have to get their medication from somewhere, right? So you can't tell them we're doing a Walmart boycott and they pharmacies at Walmart, right? That just doesn't make sense. You got to have, the capacity to be able to do those things. So, once we've done that, we can take these direct actions like economic boycotts, like protests, political campaigns, because now we would have built up that economic and political power to where our voices now have to be heard, because there's going to be real consequences for these businesses or these politicians or whoever else it is that we are taking these actions against, right? And so again, just to kind of reiterate, the point is to shift the power from the governments and the corporations and the institutions and shift it back to the community, right? The community has to have the power. The government has to understand that you work at the service of the people and not the other way around, right? The people don't work at your discretion or at your service, but you work for the people if you're a politician, right? And for these businesses to understand that you are in this community at the discretion of the community, not the other way around. Right? And so, you can't let them come in here and feel like they're doing you a favor. And so now if you have a problem with them, you can't say anything or you can't take any action against them, right? And so with that, I just kind of want to talk about some of the things that, we've already been doing in the community, some of the things that are already happening, just to understand what we built this framework around. So, in terms of education and politicizing, we do have a political education book club that we do. We do these barbershop talks, for example, to have the community come and sit and have these conversations. And we also have a newsletter that we publish every month as well to sort of inform people about what we're doing, and also provide some political education through the newsletter. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of organizations that are doing good work in the community. you have different community collaboratives. You have, your Oconee Heights Collaborative, your Harrisburg Collaborative. You have your local NAACP. A lot of the students you see here today are from Georgia College. They've been doing a lot of good work with me in the community as well. And then some of the things that we've been able to do. So we started last year. I started a community garden in Milledgeville here up on Nelson Road, and then we're getting ready to start a second community garden over at Charteray on the south side, right? So those are ways in which we're trying to address these structural issues in the community as well. We're also, one of the other things we're involved with is there's currently a group of folks in the community that are creating a housing survey to pass that housing survey out to renters and homeowners and folks in the community so that we can start to figure out what are the housing issues and what are the issues people are dealing with in terms of housing in Milledgeville, and then what can we do about it, how can we organize people, and then what direct actions can we start to push people towards in terms of addressing these issues. And then earlier, I mentioned the Hancock County situation. Last month we did have Ms. Smith and her husband, Mr. Smith, who are the co-leaders of the No Railroad in our community coalition. They came to the Barbershop and they spoke to the Milledgeville community. And we've been working with them and organizing with them for about a year now. I was with them up at the Baldwin County Superior Court as well at the last court hearing. And so, just trying to create relationships between our communities and understanding how our issues are connected, right? Because, until all of us are free, none of us are free, right? So we have to understand that, we are a lot closer to being like a Hancock County than we are to being like Atlanta, right? We are in a lot of the same situations, particularly when you look at the south side of Milledgeville. So, all in all, I just wanted to, with that last point, just wanted to show that the potential for change already exists. And all we have to do is continue to build on it and find the people that are doing the work and continue to work on these solutions, right? And so that is the end of my presentation on the program. And like I said, I really want y'all to take time with this program, when you have time to sit down and read it. It's about 30 pages. But now what I want to do is just sort of open up the conversation, to everyone else. And, let's just talk about what y'all think, ideas you all may have, and questions you may have about the program in general. So we'll go ahead and open up the conversation. If anybody has any thoughts?
Yeah, I got one question. When you were giving us the percentage of homeless in Milledgeville, I think you said it was over 40%.
Poverty.
Yes. What is the state percentage?
The state percentage, I believe, is around 14%. It's about 14%, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you take the majority of the state?
Probably. Yeah. So we are well over the state and national average when it comes to poverty in Milledgeville and Baldwin County. Yeah. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I was just what Brother David was speaking on. Once we realize that poverty is a well-engineered system, some people are forced into poverty. Some people don't want to be in certain areas, but they're forced because of, like I said, how rental market and stuff in there. So, and when we talk about humanity, and we talk about Project 25, another redid of the William Lynch theory with laws. So a lot of people going to do certain things. I mean, so it's quite natural. Black and brown skinned people going to be affected more because they directly aid with the health system. Yeah. You go out to the hospital now, they don't take Medicaid no more. Most of the older people can't drive to Atlanta or Putnam County, right? So we're under attack, but don't panic, organize. That's what I'm telling you, because there's more organization on there now. Our problem is how we bridge the gap between the younger generation and us, and even some older than I am. But still, how we do that? We have organizations that meet every Sunday's churches. We got to start using them. And talk about real life situations. We in our time, but in order to go forward, you gotta know where you've been. Yeah. See, we done been before. You can understand, because I can see you're a very large young brother. So once you understand that, you'll know what you got to do to get past this. I mean, and I promise you, you can call Brown versus Board of Education, you can go to Civil Rights Movement, all that stuff right there, voter right bill, all of them in my lifetime. I know they see a lot of this stuff. I mean, so that's what I'm saying. So we got to find a way to come together and how to turn to each other and not own each other. We can't fight with this hand and fight each other with this one.
Right.
So we know what we're up against. So I commend you first of all for
Good job.
can't wait to team up. I mean, cause that was gonna take.
Yeah, we matter of fact, I'm pass this.
And you know what, during the beginning part of this together, you remember I was telling y'all, like, with Donald Trump in office, it ain't gonna affect me.
Right.
But let me tell y'all how it's already has started to affect me. My son has been getting Medicaid for so many years. I mean, he's 6 years old for 6 years straight. Now, we gotta pay a monthly fee for Medicaid. So it's affecting my home by the Medicaid expenses being increased, and I'm quite sure that other people's homes is affecting as well too. So yes, it's starting to trickle down effect into the homes of the ones that like me to thinking that it's not gonna do nothing to me.
Yeah, I remember that was a big conversation we was having because I was trying to tell him, I was like, it's gonna get there, you know. He was saying, you know, and I told him I understand, you know, a lot of that mindset that people have that, you know, well, as long as I take care of my household, then you know, everything's gonna be fine. But you gotta understand, even, you know, people say, well, I don't do politics. Politics is gonna find its way to you. You know, so you are better off understanding what's going on and you know, getting with your community and taking precautions against it. Because like I said, you know, if one of us can be affected, all of us can be affected.
And, you know, and another thing, you know, one of the probably more horrific act of humanity was pretty much abolishing in 1863, right? So we having a place we call America to understand what humanity is all about. Because you know it was illegal, slavery was illegal, but it wasn't right.
It was.
So we got to condition our mind to think just because it's illegal.
It doesn't make it right. Exactly. And I think that's where, you know, that's one of the big reasons why I wanted to talk about human rights. You know, because human rights is something you have regardless of the law. Right? Regardless of what the law is in your city, your state, your country, your human rights remain the same no matter where you go. So if people can start thinking about our issues as human rights issues, we're not so much attached to the law. You gonna say something?
No, I'll just wait that.
Oh, okay. You know, so if people understand these issues as human rights issues, then you understand that it doesn't matter what the law says. If your human rights are being abused, then you are constitutionally guaranteed by the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights to protect your human rights by any means necessary, right? So people need to start thinking about their human rights and not just thinking about civil rights or the law, what's legal or what's illegal, right? At one point in time, Dr. King was considered a terrorist in this country, right? Nelson Mandela was considered a terrorist, you know, by the United States. So it's not, you know, it's not always about what the law says, but about what is right and what is wrong.
Whatever anyone of your then you'll be considered the one as well. Anytime you speak truth to power, you become the heart.
Right.
I mean, they don't find a reason to this and that. Hey, you know, no doubt about talking.
Yes, stand for supper. Yes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're stronger together.
Yeah.
So however we go by together, what together look like to you all.
Yeah.
And we're strong together. We need some new energy, new idea.
Yeah.
That's what we fighting now. Our people get on. Our group not switch board. So they bring a new energy.
Right.
We bring the same old idea.
Yeah, I agree, and I think a big part of it is being able to hold people accountable.
That's it.
You know, and I think that a lot of times, you know, there's not a lot of systems of accountability in our community. You know, so I think there's not a lot of systems of accountability that are put in place. Like you mentioned the churches earlier, for example, right? Who was calling out the churches to say that the churches need to start doing something, right?
I went to church last weekend in Arsenal, and he's the pastor that I attended. He was speaking out. I can get him.
He said it again?
The pastor that I went to the church, he did speak out
Yeah.
what's going on. So they do know some are afraid, and some will always be afraid. And you got my support, and you need to come see us too.
Yeah, absolutely.
What the-
Yeah.
Well,
What
go
to
ahead,
say?
go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I don't know how you got my email address, that's how I heard about this meeting. But it sounds as though you've been meeting for a while, and you're doing the barbershops, which is fine.
Yeah.
But, I need your contact information.
No, that's it.
I didn't know your name.
Yeah. Yes. So my name again is Fidelis. Fidelis Fogle Facts.
Dallas?
Yes, ma'am. And any Fogle Facts. And so anybody who needs my contact information, please make sure I give it to you before we leave, and I will write that down for you. But yeah, I think that, like you said, we do need to start coming together. And, we have it in the barbershop here because, Wayman was kind enough to open up this barbershop for us to do it here. But anywhere else where we can do them, we want to talk to other folks around the community. We know everybody might not be able to get to the barbershop, but if there are places in the community where, folks in your neighborhood can get to and you want to do something like this, we will do it. We'll do it there. So,
Have you gone to the church?
I have not been to any churches yet in terms of like doing something like this at the church.
Yeah, see, this used to go to the church too.
Yeah.
In addition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell your pastors to reach out to me.
That's the original place.
Yeah. Tell your pastors to reach out to me. And we would love to.
One of the.
Unfortunately, I don't have a pastor.
They all got they retired.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But it needs to be in the church also.
Yes, that's
I
what
agree. I agree. Yeah. And the church was the meeting place for
That's right.
That's what that's organized, and it's unfortunate that it's not happening anymore. But
You get them old church folk behind you.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
That's right.
And I think
I would
they'll
love to make
listen.
that happen.
I think they'll listen. We listen.
Yeah, and I appreciate y'all for being
And
here.
I'm impressed.
Thank you.
I'm glad to see the youth stand up.
Yeah.
Because we have walked and walked and walked.
I know it.
Still walking. Don't walk till I die.
Yeah, that's part of my, the drive behind this as well. Is, it's inspiring to see the older generation still fighting, but y'all need rest. Y'all deserve to rest. Y'all deserve to rest. So this is me trying to take up, do my responsibility.
Thank you.
My part and carrying on the fight. Yes, ma'am.
I know you know me, it's coming, but I do have an event center, and you're welcome to have any meetings there.
Thank you.
And I do have the Mormon Center for Milledgeville, and I came from the Atlanta area. I was born here, but to see all the homeless people there, and and out in the cold and whatever, and then I was coming here. Like, why we don't have that, because it's supposed to be in every county. And every county should have that, every city should have their own, warming center or shelter. That's these are our government, they have, your areas here. But I did volunteer, and I stepped up to the plate, and I did that. But the support that came in with that, with me reaching out to the city, the county, it wasn't as well. But it's some people that got these private groups that, people that I don't even know, and I don't have to know it. But they stepped up to the plate, and it seemed like a good thing that I was doing, and they volunteered. They volunteered, and they came in to help. But anything about the organization coming together, I have my own nonprofit organization, and you're right, when I came here, I don't want to, a lot of people were doing the same thing that I was doing in Atlanta. So I said, okay, why am I going to reinvent the wheel? We can just come together and do the same thing, just make the whole event or whatever we're doing bigger.
Yeah.
That's the whole. It's some people that have an organization where you're a true leader, and I can guarantee that I am that leader person, because I don't know how many marches that I marched with downtown on MLK or anything that have with activists, and I was always there. I never let my children in school there before the holiday came. We was always there. But coming here, you're right. If they don't really know you, it's trying to get support in you. People we come together. Let's do that. And I never anything that I opened up here in Baldwin County, I never said this is for us.
Yeah.
This is how we gonna make our community bigger and better if we don't join in together.
Yes.
And I have been all the way to Atlanta, and that when you talking about the homeless and the plans or whatever, bring those same people here to Milledgeville. And they work on plans. They know where the council is. You know, we working on a plan. I get the same emails that, you know, when the meeting will be in Atlanta, I was over there. I stayed overnight to find out what's going on. How can I bring it back to Milledgeville? You're right, to get people to listen to it. That's what, you know, you gotta get people, bring them together, and you can share it to, and you're right, the best place is through church, because a lot of people go to church. And if you can start from there and put the pamphlets and the information there, you have, just like they pass out the newsletters or programs, they can pass that, they can include that too as well, and people will read it or get a person announced, or you can come in as a visitor, you know, and a speaker, and people will listen to it. You just got to get out there and experience it. And I tell you, it's a working process, but you can do it. Because that's what you need. You don't need, if only like 4 or 5 people come together, that means that your plan is being directed. You're doing that plan. And that's how I am. I'm going through some things now, but I'm not going to stop and I'm not going to give up. You know, if you give up, that means the enemy done won. And I'm not going to do that, and that's not me, that's not my personality. I'm going to keep on doing to make things right. You know, that's the only way that we got children here, we got grandkids here, you know, not you, I'm just speaking of older people, but I came back to Milledgeville to make a difference, not to be in it, you know, I still have my grandchildren here, I still have my daughter here, and we've been trying to go back to Atlanta for the last 4 years, and we are still here. And so I told my daughter, it's a reason that we're here. It is a reason, and so we just gonna make it home now. We decided, you know, this is our home. Whenever we want to go back to Atlanta, you know, we do that. But I'm here to help you in a way I can.
I appreciate it. You know, that's something I think about too, because as much as, you know, there's a lot of people that want to leave, a lot of people don't have the means to leave, right? And we don't want people to feel like they're stuck in a bad situation. You know, we want people to feel like this will get better if we come together, right? So that's also part of, you know, what we have to think about. Like you said, there's people, you know, children and grandchildren, you know, people who have generations of family here, you know, who deserve to have a decent quality of life.
So do you have regular meetings here?
Yeah, so we try to do something once every month.
Okay.
And so this is our 3rd one this year. We when I came back last year, I started doing them last year, and we were doing about 2 a month last year. But this year we've been doing 1 a month, and we've had pretty good turnouts. Like I said, February we had the Hancock County folks come down and talk about what they've been you know, dealing with, and then in January we had an MLK weekend meeting, and we had, you know, a whole bunch of different folks who came and talked about what they're doing in the community, and so, you know, we just kind of want to have that energy of people coming and talking together and figure out what each other is doing so we can help each other, you know. And like I said, one of the things I try to do is I try to go to as many community meetings as I can, you know, the Coney Heights collaborative meetings, the Harrisburg collaborative meetings, and things like that, just to hear what people are talking about, what people are dealing with, and what efforts are being made, you know, to address these issues. So, yeah.
I just want to you all have to excuse me, this Colin is beating me up. But I want to thank you just for the information that you brought. It's some very good information, and a few people alluded to the fact that the churches need to be more involved, and it starts with the churches. Thank God I see 2 of our ministers here who pretty much every time I go to a community meeting or entrance in the community, I can see the Reverend and Mrs. Reverend, I think, at the meetings. Vice President ALP, NAACP, Paul is here. But we got to have more, and it starts with the churches. You know, I grew up, I was a kid during the civil rights movement, and all of our mass meetings were held at local churches. And that's how we got the Voting Rights Act passed. I was a little kid back then, but I was knocking on doors and educating people to why it was important to vote. because a lot of people don't realize they don't connect the vote with the dinner table. They don't realize the way you vote is connected to your dinner table. They just don't do it. So education for us, it was in the churches. That's where we educated people how important it was to vote. What you were saying, and your other people talk about poverty in Milledgeville. Well, I wasn't here back then. I came here some years later, but I am told that there was a politician who came to Milledgeville and told people that his objective was going to lessen the government footprint in Milledgeville.
Okay.
And people went out and elected him. And Central State disappeared. But they didn't know any they didn't know any better because they were not educated. So the beginning, what's got to happen, we talk about the poverty rate of Milledgeville is way up there, and the reason it's up there is because of the way we vote. And so people have got to be educated, and the churches have got to be a primary cog in that wheel. I looked at the last ballot that we did in November. There was about 13 people running on that ballot, and I think out of that 13, only 5 of those races were contested. So when people get in office and they have no competition, they own the office. Look, why are they going to listen to you? Now you talk about politicians, they don't listen to them. Out of those 13 positions that were on the ballot, only 5 of them contested. So income, they own the office. What they going to listen to you for?
Right.
So we got to educate people, and they got to connect the dot between the voting book and the dinner table. And most people don't get it. They don't realize how they vote.
Yeah.
They voted Central State right out of here, and everybody in the communities were booming. They had jobs. The Milledgeville was good. And what did they do? They let some smooth talking politicians put this county into poverty, and now we've let some snake-tongued politicians put this country into poverty. If we don't have a drastic change in the next few months, this country is going to hit rock bottom. So that's all I've got to say about that is, number one, education. We gotta quit waiting till 2 months before the election. We need somebody to run for this. I've been here now about 10 years active in politics. I've been in every building in the manor. I've been in every building in the body project, and I've been in most buildings in West End. And I've been in almost every apartment in the manor and body project. But what we have got to do is we can't wait till 2 months before election time. I've seen that happen ever since I've been here. 2 months before election time. You want to run? You need to run for this. The time to start making change is right now.
Yeah.
I was not on the road when I was a teenager, educating people. I tell you, it's good to go out and get people registered, but they are registered to get you out of their face.
Yeah.
But if they don't know why they need to vote, if they don't realize the value, they ain't going.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'm not going to take up all the time.
No, you're fine, though, but I think people need to hear that because I think that's a big problem with voting in general. Like you said, people are not educated on what they're voting for. So you sign up somebody to vote, like you said, they'll vote all the all the good things away because they're not,
Get you
yeah,
out of
out of the
that.
face.
I worked,
Yeah.
a lot of people know me, and I worked in the community, and I worked on people getting them to vote, and finally they'll sign up. And the people that I work with, they'll brag about how many people we registered to vote.
Right.
Those numbers don't mean a thing, and half of them don't show up.
Gotta pick 'em up.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you so much for what you're doing.
No problem.
This is wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
I think one of, go ahead,
No, no,
I
no.
think one of our greatest challenges is connecting people at your age.
Yeah.
Get them fired up and just understand. See, people, you know, free with nothing like the roots. So we talking about DEI and doing away with the Department of Education. They're all by design. So unless you know about you, unless you're concerned about where you gotta go. So all this is planned, I'm telling you now, from the beginning, from way back then. You
Yeah.
understand how far it came from. I mean, at one time, you talking about Georgia College, one time you couldn't go to Georgia College.
That's why you can't get no nurses in there now.
You had to go to
You can't.
APC. That's why they were started.
But one time I remember Georgia College had a whole lot of black students enrolled in Georgia College. Back in 1988, 89, the enrollment in Georgia College with us, it was really high. I don't know what happened from then to now,
Yeah.
but then it was.
Yeah.
Too high nurses can't get in.
Yeah, because you just coming off past the segregation, so I mean, so you
Right,
just
right.
got that started, you've been a couple of years into that. So
Then they
now,
ended it.
right, so now you're rolling back, so, right, so again, when I was in school, I think we had black one week, but again, big father, grandfather, I don't expect this system to be good.
Yeah.
Teach my children
Exactly.
and my grandchildren that feel me about me. It's my duty.
Yeah.
Teach mine how to look for themselves and love themselves and proud and say who they are and where you want to go. Always have a city goal.
Yeah.
Treat people right the way you want to be treated. You know, no more than no one. You know, listen to anyone else. Maybe everything God continue to be. That's what I put in mind. I'm telling you, no better no one. You know what I'm saying? We have to understand that. And again, I can't thank you enough. We can't thank you enough to see that young energy. But we got to reach others that you can hear that can connect with these people. Hey, those scriptures, they call it old, what I know the way the young got it strong. I'm still going a little slow.
So, what you're doing is good in the community and to add the church to it, do both ends, not either or.
Yeah.
Both
Yeah.
ends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you a one man now, or is there a little crew?
I have a little crew. They're here today.
Oh, there you go.
There's some people who couldn't make it because of
Okay,
working.
I got you.
But yeah, so we and a lot of them are college students as well.
Gotcha.
And you know, one of my goals was also because with the college students, I think what happens is they come here and they stay on that campus and they don't understand what's going on in the community, right? And because of that, they don't really feel a sense of responsibility to respecting this community and to contributing to this community. So one of the things I really wanted to do, and why we've been able to get so many college students out here, is really wanted to build a relationship with college students that care and tell them that there's things going on in the community that you really could be helping with. So they've come with me to, you know, their Coney Heights collaborative meetings. You know, they go down with me to Hancock County. You know, they come out with me to the community garden and all those things. So they've really, you know, shown, you know, not just, you know, said that they care, but they're showing that they care, right? So, you know, and so we want to, you know, build that relationship with them. And like you said, also bring the young people that are in the community into it as well. And so, you know, I know there's a lot of young folks that are still in the church, so going to the churches could be a start, you know, as well to making that happen. You know, so I would love to, you know, just, you know, going from this meeting, what do you all want to see happen?
I would like to see this presentation made at every church, because it's very good information, and I really appreciate it. And the other thing is start working on the next election today. We got to, you know, we got to pick our candidates and support them and introduce them and get them into that specific district. We identify a candidate for that district every time the church has a function in that district, he ought to be there, she ought to be there.
Yeah.
And they've got to, they got to get out in the community and let people know them. And I'm gonna have fun, but
That's all right. Thank you for coming.
I appreciate it. The information was very good.
Yes, sir.
And hopefully, keep it moving.
Yeah, right. Absolutely will.
And there are two people here that I know can get some things.
Yeah, make sure I give y'all my contact information before y'all leave.
He's a community activist too.
Yeah, I see him every Tuesday at the Harrisburg meetings. Yeah.
One thing I love to see, I've been trying to figure out probably long been alive, is how we can come together. And I'm talking all the organizations, never we have organized. You can't see them coming together, you gotta follow the organization. I mean, listen.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it's okay.
Yeah.
But we have to learn how to strengthen the unity.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I wrote in the program as well is a lot of times when people are trying to create unity between organizations, a lot of times they're trying to create they want want us to agree on every single thing. That's not always going to happen, right?
No.
But the things that we do agree on, we need to create programs around. We need to find points of unity. We need to find where our interests align. And if we have the basic understanding that what we're trying to do is we're trying to fight for people's human rights, then we're going to have a lot of things that overlap, right? We're going to have a lot of initiatives that overlap in which we could come together and support. So we don't have to see eye to eye on every single thing, but the things that we do agree on, let's focus on that, and we can leave the other disagreements at the door, right? But when we come to the table, we're coming to the table to discuss the things that we agree on and work for those things and build towards those things.
I'm gonna say this, I'm the last thing, I promise you.
No,
I talk about doing this subject, I promise I could.
Yeah.
But I don't know, we got a major election Tuesday, right? So the East Block.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know who hadn't voted, but our public school system under attack. Directly, not indirectly, directly. So if you hadn't voted, go vote Tuesday. I had early voting on Friday. That's right. So we need that East Block passed, our school system under attack. So we need to be talking about that. I remember the church from chapel. We need to be talking about that Sunday, talking about who died and who this and I got all that. But we need to be talking about this East Block. I'm telling you that.
Yeah,
You're talking about some programs that we going.
Mm-hmm.
Long after school program and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just this worker, she said we're on board education. I'm telling you, we're under attack. So this type of stuff we got to be talking about.
Yeah.
We can't play with it. We talk about it on a federal level. I'm
We can
talking
talk about
about
this local stuff. Yeah.
Just, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say too, did you mention that you were at Georgia College, Early College?
Yeah, I graduated from early college.
Okay, that's a good place to,
Yeah.
for you to go and talk to those young people.
Yeah, I was volunteering with them last year. We plan on volunteering with them. Young men back here, we actually just got hired to start teaching at early college as well. So we're trying to place ourselves in all the right places. We're also going to start volunteering at the Baldwin High School garden, helping them with that. We're really trying to get into the school system and, like you said, talk to young people and have their attention as well. So, it's a work in progress. You got to kind of go through the bureaucracy and things like that. But, we're definitely trying to make those efforts. So anything else that, y'all can think of that could help, in that sense, if there's teachers that would invite us into their classes, however, I know the education, the politics for education now is a little tense, but we would love to be able to speak to more students.
What church you think would be welcoming, would be more welcome to have this discussion there or to bring other churches in to bridge the gap between the
right here, and Wesley. It would be a bad idea to come up with some kind of date or something like that, trying to slide, and then see
like
who all can go.
I'll make sure I give y'all my contact.
And the thing with that, like I'm telling you, we think like that. We have to do we'll think like that. But then you got to start with the leaders. Like let's go with the two pastors, known pastors that really support the NWC. Right, but you got others that won't.
Well, that's true.
For some reason they're afraid and just won't speak truth to power about certain things. See, I could talk all day about this.
Yeah, I know.
We get concerned about my soul, not the condition I'm living under.
Exactly.
So, but to you,
Who's that?
Sanders.
Sanders.
Okay.
Stay encouraged.
Yeah.
Do not go with your will.
Yeah.
You gonna need it.
Yeah. And I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
I can help you with the rest of the chapter.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, no, I definitely, trust me, I definitely won't grow worried. I've been, those of you who know Dr. Ladd, y'all can talk to her about.
I do.
She'll tell you, I've been like this ever since I was in high school. So, it's something that I'm dedicated to, and I feel that it's very important. Somebody has to do it, and like you said, hopefully I could be a guiding light for other young people, and they, see somebody that looks like them, is as young as them, and they also get involved. And yeah, I'm stand for the older generation, Hey, but I'm looking at y'all for the guidance as well,
So we will start check.
Yeah.
If you need any help getting into the schools, just let me know.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Open door right there.
Yeah, and you have my contact information, so please reach out. Like I said, I will, after this meeting, I want us to do something else. I want us to be going into the churches or going into classrooms. I was invited into a couple of, Georgia college classes last year. It's an interesting, environment, but nonetheless, I think that at the very least, putting this information in people's hands, giving them a chance to have this program and read it for themselves and think about what it is that we're saying. And, like you said, some people are scared, but I think people are scared because people are afraid to be vulnerable. They don't know what's going to happen if they go out there. But if we move as a unit, as a community, people don't have to be afraid because we'll have others, we're moving together rather than moving as an individual.
Don't forget about uneducated.
Excuse me.
You're right. Yeah.
What year you graduated from Georgia College?
2020. Yeah, I remember you too. Yeah.
I've been working there 22 years.
Oh, yeah, really? Okay.
I've been retired. I worked state 34 years. I went to Georgia College.
Yes, sir. Let me give you one of these programs. I don't know if you got one. Okay.
Well, when and I say this, like I said, I'm really passionate about your ministry and your assignment.
Yeah.
So, one thing I learned doing this, if I gotta make you comfortable to come into the room, I'm in the wrong room.
Yeah.
I'm in the wrong room. I'm speaking the truth, people not gonna like it, speaking the truth. These facts, you might not like it, but they're facts. So don't get mad at me, get mad at the facts.
Trust me, we've experienced that. We've had our fair share of experience.
Don't be some more. But in the meantime, be narrowing it down a little bit. And put it in a package. So you can put it all.
The information?
The information.
Yeah, that's what this is.
Make a real choice.
You're talking about the presentation?
The presentation.
Yeah, this is what this is right here. Yeah, and then this is the extended version. This is the full program right here. So.
But when you present it, she say make it short.
Okay.
Yeah, make the presentation in the church.
Okay, for the church.
Much shorter than it is today.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. All right. Any other?
Well, we can.
Good.
Well, thank y'all for coming out. If you haven't got something to eat, there's some food and some drinks back there.
I'll just get ready.
Young man, hope sit too long.
I know. Anybody who need my contact information, if you haven't gotten it, please let me know. I'll give you my